Hey teachers and trainers, quick question for you. Are you really using AI to make your job easier yet? If not, it's probably because this whole AI thing feels kind of like a black box. Powerful, but a little bit confusing. I'm Aaron. I've been an educator and learning and development professional in the tech world for over 15 years. And today I'm going to break down how AI actually works in plain English so you can finally understand what it is, what it isn't, and how to use it to save time, create better learning experiences, and stay ahead in your field. So let's go ahead and dive right in. AI is transforming education and workplace learning very quickly. So you don't need to be a data scientist, but you do need to understand the basics. So our goal after today is to know how AI works and how to apply it in our classrooms or in our training programs. Let's talk a little bit about what AI really is. Does AI mean that the machines and the robots are all taking over? Probably not. Okay, think of it like machines that can find patterns in data and make really pretty good predictions about outcomes. Okay, it's more predicting probability that it's going to happen. There's really two big approaches in the computer world. And the model that we've been following for years and years and years and years is what's called a deterministic or rules-based model for programming computers. And that is where you have a computer programmer that sits down at the keyboard, types in code that says, if this happens, then computer, you do that. Okay, and it's a lot of if and a lot of then. For example, if I hit the letter J key on my keyboard, then computer, you need to put the letter J on my Word document, for example. Okay, it's very rules-based and it's very if-then. Now let's look at how AI is changing kind of how the computer models and the computer programming works. It uses what's called a probabilistic or probabilities type of model. And what that does is it just means that the computer is working differently. Instead of saying, hey computer, if the user does something, then you do a predetermined, pre-programmed outcome. Instead, what we're looking at with AI and probabilistic computer models is where we feed data into the computer and it does statistical analysis. So it takes all of the different stuff that it already has been programmed to know, and it says, okay, based on what you've told me, the most probable answer is this. Okay, so instead of if, then, A leads to B, it's really more, we give the computer data, it does a whole bunch of probability, statistical analysis on it, and it spits out what it feels is the most probable solution. So as we think about AI, it's not actually intelligent. It's just really good at predictive analysis so that it is programmed more kind of like our brains work as humans, is we take all of the information that's coming at us, we kind of crunch it in our minds and say, okay, probably the best solution here is to do this. Okay, and that's why a lot of people are saying, wow, this AI seems really smart. It's really intelligent. It's really not. It's just approaching problems differently that is closer aligned with how we think as humans. And so it looks a lot more like how we operate inside our brains. Okay, so that's an important thing to understand about what AI really is and how it operates. Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper into the deterministic and probabilistic models here. Okay, so like we talked about, if X, under the deterministic side, if X occurs, then the computer will produce Y as an output. Okay, there's a lot of lines of code involved in that, trying to put into the computer all of the potential inputs so that it knows what outputs to produce later. So for example, for spell check, we put in the whole dictionary into a spell check program, and then if it identifies a word that it doesn't match the same way as it has in the preloaded dictionary, it says, oh, this is wrong, and that's why you get those little red squiggles underneath words like when you're doing a Word doc. A great application of using a deterministic style is like quizzes and answer keys where there's correct answers. So let's look at probabilistic models. Okay, so what it's doing is it's estimating the most likely answer based on patterns it can see in what's called its training data. We'll get to the training data in just a second here, okay? You put in some sort of an input into an AI or a probabilistic model, and it says, okay, I've got what you're asking me for. Let me go back into all of the stuff that is in my database of what is called, what we would determine correct answers. And it would say, okay, based on what you've given me, the statistical probability is high that this is going to be the best next thing, right? So for example, here, when you are using ChatGPT, it then will be able to predict the next word in, say, a sentence, or prompt you and write a full paragraph of information based on a prompt that you give it. Because what it does is say, if you say, give me a lesson outline about the solar system, for example, it's going to go into all of its data. It's going to say, okay, I have some information about how to teach about the solar system or whatever. And then it says, okay, based on all of those things I know about teaching about the solar system, here's how you can teach about the solar system. The cool thing about that is it does all of that analysis work in under a few seconds. Okay, it's really powerful. So as we look at using AIs, I mean, some of the applications here for using the AI models are for brainstorming, rewriting things, where you can take, your version 1.0, put it into AI and say, hey, strengthen this for me, right? And it can do some revisions and rewriting for you. Or like we talked about a little bit already is, we've all had those times when someone comes to us and says, hey, I need you to teach about a specific topic in like half an hour. And we kind of look at them like a deer in the headlights and we're like, okay, let me work on that, right? What you can do is you can feed that into AI and say, hey, I need this lesson plan quickly. 30 seconds later, you've got a full lesson plan ready to go. And then you can use the rest of your prep time to actually prep, okay? So there's some really great uses that we can use, both deterministic as well as probabilistic. But like I said, we are moving into this age of AI, which is more of a probabilistic model, where it's looking at patterns of the past and predicting what will be a good outcome in the future. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how AI models are trained. Okay, so AI learns from massive data sets. And if you watch the news, you'll see that there's controversy out there already about these massive data centers that are like using up like municipal water supplies for all the cooling needs they have. And like the citizens are angry, and there's all this stuff that goes into training AI that's needed. But the fact of the matter is that AI uses massive data sets. So what we do in order to feed an AI model is we feed it text, we feed it examples, we feed it conversations, and then we tell it in what's called a training data set. We basically say, okay, AI, these are all correct answers. Okay, and we tell AI that those are all the correct scenarios that lead to correct outcomes and things like that. The model then identifies, or I'm going to air quote, learns these patterns, which leads it to be able to build statistical relationships. And in these statistical relationships and these binary, ifs and thens, computers are incredibly adept at learning those things and synthesizing those really quickly. Then as you're continuing to train an AI model, is you test it. You put some prompts in and say, hey, give me this output, and then it'll do its thing. And you have to test whether it synthesized or predicted an appropriate outcome. All right. So really that's how an AI model is trained. A whole ton of data is put into it. It then synthesizes and says, okay, these must be the correct answers and the correct ways of synthesizing the way to the correct answer. And then the third step here is, of course, we train it, we refine it, and that sort of thing. Okay. The real key takeaway here is the quality of your AI system is really dependent on the data quality. It's been standard since the beginning of computers, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Right? If your training data is garbage, then your outputs are going to be garbage as well. Okay, so it's a little bit of a cautionary moment here to say, hey, whenever you're using AI, don't completely trust whatever answers it gives you. I mean, you're the human, you've got the brain that you can look at the data and say, does this look right or does it not look right? because AI gets stuff wrong sometimes, okay? And so you just have to understand that that's part of this whole equation. And part of this, we're in the early stages of AI, and so we're still training all the models, right? So let's talk about large language models, because these really are the brains behind AI systems like ChatGPT, okay? So large language models is where we fed all of that data into the computer, and it starts to synthesize and say, okay, this must lead to that, therefore I've got a high statistical probability that that is the case, etc., right? They predict one word at a time, right? They predict what's the next word that statistically should follow a previous word or string of words, okay? Because remember, inside the computer, these are all ones and zeros, right? It's just stringing together and synthesizing these data, these binary data points. Large language models, they can predict, understand text and tone. They can scale up to billions of parameters. There's so many parameters it can use, just because that's the way computers are built. They're very powerful and able to handle lots of parameters. Why it matters for us as educators is it can draft lesson plans, scripts, or quizzes literally in seconds. Okay, and we'll in another video we'll talk about how to prompt large language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, and there's a million others that are popping up every day anyhow. Okay, but these large language models are very powerful in helping us as educators to be able to quickly get to at least version 1.0 of something that we then can edit, right, and personalize. So let's look next at natural language processing, because NLP, natural language processing, really is one of the revolutionary components of the AI world. So if we go back into early days of computers and all the decades leading up to AI, right, here in the last 10 years, what you had to have was a computer programmer who would then learn a computer programming language like JavaScript, C++, C#, Python, etc. And they would learn that language so that they then could speak to the computer, right? And it was a highly specialized kind of a language that computer programmers would have to learn. Now, fast forward here to what we have today with AI models is we have natural language processing, which means that the computer can understand natural language that we speak and type every day. So no longer do we have to have some sort of a degree in computer programming or some sort of training as a computer programmer and knowledge of those programming languages in order to interact with a computer and have it do things for us that previously was prohibitive because we just didn't know those languages, right? So what this allows for us is it allows the AI to summarize text, translate it, and look at sentiment. Sentiment is such an interesting thing, right? Because it can process human language and say that, if I am speaking certain words, it means I'm sad. Or if I say the same kind of things, only I put them in a different order, or I maybe put a pause between them, or things like that, then it means I'm happy, or I'm a little bit unsure, or being sarcastic or something, right? It can understand a little bit better what that sentiment is, and use that and help us as we're using AI. So use cases here for natural language processing. Of course, you can summarize research for lessons, right? Because it can take the lesson outline and summarize it for us. It can translate training for global learners. So there are AIs on the market right now who can translate your content. Let's say you write it in English or just your first language, your primary language, and it can summarize that into summaries. It can also translate it. So it can translate it into hundreds of different languages nearly instantly. Okay, so you can reach a wider audience. There are programs out there that during meetings and things, it will do two things: transcribe what's being said into whatever language it's being spoken in. Then it can automatically translate that same wording into a new language and put that as like captions on the screen for someone who may have a different language as their primary language. Super powerful concept there. Okay. It can analyze learner feedback automatically. So instead of you having to read every single comment that someone leaves about your course or about your class, all of a sudden you can have AI summarize or analyze that and spit it out to you in either some sort of a word format, in some sort of a table or a graph or whatever format you tell it to put in. Okay, and it's really a powerful, powerful thing. Okay, let's talk about generative AI in action. So generative AI. So what does that mean? We hear the words a lot. This is like what ChatGPT is doing, right? It's generating content based on your inputs. Okay, so it creates new content, not just retrieving like from a database or something like that. It can turn text into lessons, quizzes, and case studies. It can do images, so it can create images for you based on you give it some sort of a prompt that says, hey, I need you to create an image in this style that shows this, and pop it into the AI, and it will generate imagery for you. Okay, and this image generation and also the audio and video generation is getting better every single week, right? Like if you watch this video a year from now, it will be significantly better. AI will be better at generating images as well as video and audio than it is today. Okay. On the video and audio side, AI can do voiceovers. It can create explainer clips about certain things. So that's a powerful use case there. And really the use case here for us as learning and development and educators is that AI really can help us get to our curriculum quicker, right? We don't have to do as much grunt work getting it. We can let the computer get us to a good point, and then we polish it from there. All right, let's talk about some strengths and limitations of AI. So some of the strengths of AI are huge speed capability. It lets us be creative. It can be very scalable. However, limitations of AI is sometimes you have accuracy problems, right? So always check your outputs. It can have bias. If all of its training data is biased in one direction or another, that's how it's going to produce answers as well, because it's been told that those inputs are accurate. Okay, so be aware that there may be bias in AI generated content. And then it also lacks real world judgment. Again, that's why as humans we need to look at it at the outputs and say, hey, is this right? Because the worst thing you could do is just trust the AI, put something out there that's completely wrong or false, and then have to back it off or say, oops, I'm sorry, I messed up or whatever. So always verify before using AI outputs in your training materials. All right. So yeah, let's wrap up here by looking at practical applications. So from a lesson planning perspective, oh my gosh, this is a game changer. We can get to our drafts, our version 1.0s, so much faster. Instead of hours, it takes seconds to get to a rough draft state. Quizzes and rubrics, we have instant templates that we can have the AI generate for us. It also can create lesson plans and quizzes and things based on large sets of data. So if you have a whole chapter that you need to create an outline for, or you need to create a quiz on, copy that content into AI, say, hey, give me a 5-question quiz with 4 multiple choice and 1 true false, and within seconds it will generate that for you. Again, check the output, make sure it's accurate, but it is super fast. It can also create scenarios and role plays so that instead of you having to crunch your brain quite as hard thinking of all those, let AI do that for you, and then you polish the result, okay? And you polish from there. You can improve your initial draft of something, so you can put it in and say, hey, ChatGPT, improve this for me, and then copy your content in, and you can even give it parameters about what kind of tone should it take, what sort of expertise should it be considering and being incorporating into that output. You can do training emails and announcements with less admin time, right? You can just say, hey, write me a quick email welcoming people to their new hire program. Great. And then again, you polish from there. And then you also can prompt AI to say, hey, make this lesson more engaging for my audience, right? And it can come up with ideas for interactive activities, icebreakers, group activities, and that sort of thing. All right, last but not least, of course, my friends, here's what you're going to do as your homework from this session. Pick one task that you repeat often. Try prompting AI to do 80% of the work, edit, refine, and apply, and then build some confidence as you experiment in ChatGPT. All right, so here's the bottom line, guys. AI is not here to replace us. It's here to make us faster and more effective. And if we learn how to use AI effectively, we're gonna grow by leaps and bounds. Okay, we got to learn the basics, experiment, and apply it to our workflows. Thanks so much for joining me on today's session, all about how AI works and really what it means to you and me as educators and learning and development professionals. If you like this content, hit that subscribe button. It helps me a lot. And if you have specific questions about AI, go ahead and put those down in the comments. I would love to help answer those questions for you.